It's the 26th of May, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. It's part 2 of living in the now and why now is so important for us to move forward. Everything the deep state has for control of humanity was built on technologies put here to harm us, and by us, that also includes them. And do you ever feel like we are running on a hamster wheel? Here is why. Aren't those little hamsters cute? Okay, well, this is the 26th of May report, even though we are recording it in the morning of the 27th based on a really crazy weekend. It is insanely busy out there today, just as it has been for the last few days. And, you know, they can try to fight it all they want to try to fight it, but, you know, it's going to happen and it's inevitable. So let's talk about some semi-regular news first before I get into some more information about the now. The deep state had a lot of meetings over the weekend, and a lot of them were here locally. They met with a lot of the local people trying to come up with a solution as to what to do because, well, today is the day after the new moon. They love their moons, as you know. And, it's another promised payday for everyone that didn't exactly happen. Didn't work out the way they wanted it to. I'm not sure why they thought it was going to work out because there really wasn't a whole lot going on out there as far as potential pay. There's a lot of attempted hacking going on and a lot of remaining facilities, so to speak, that they thought they could achieve this task from. So, you know, well, I'm trying to say this in the nicest way possible, but I just don't think they get it. They probably will never get it until the boat has left and we are all moving forward in a very positive way. On that note, the meetings that took place down the street this weekend were all about trying to figure out a way where they could, I guess, work. I use this term lightly, work together with us. And by work together with us, it means how can we control you? And it's not just me, it's all of humanity. You see, because a lot of their corporate structures are falling apart, their government structures are falling apart, and it's not just about money in this case, it's about the energy that flows behind all of those structures and where those structures came from and the actual purpose behind those structures that are falling apart. So some of the things that were discussed, because I listened to all their meetings, you know, I sometimes half-heartedly, and maybe I'll just fast forward through them later. But we always have ears and eyes in pretty much every meeting, regardless of how secure they think it is. And the ones down the street were talking about appointing me a person from their group that would work together with me. But by working together, they mean they would tell me what to do. This person would be well-versed in not only economics, but other types of global structures, which if they are well-versed in that, then they're not sharing it with the group or the group is not listening on their side. They thought about saying, well, I can release money and do what I want to do to some degree, unless this person objects. And they were going to start out with a 30-70 offer, meaning if they release 70% of the funding to their group, which they could do whatever they wanted with, allegedly, the 30% would come to us. Well, you know, then the next was, well, you can go to 40 to 60, and then, well, how about 50-50? But they get to keep control of all of their downline and their operatives. That didn't really go over very well with people, and they did not think that we would accept it. So there were 3 meetings that happened back to back, with some people being in the initial meeting, and then more and more invited to the last 2. By the time they got to the 3rd meeting, everything went off the rails. It was crazy. the amount of arguments that were taking place. So they then left and then came back the next day and decided to, well, come up with a bright idea, another bright idea. And this bright idea was that we each get to keep our respective positions. And they really didn't go into much detail about what respective positions were, but based on some phone calls that we received over the course of the couple of days, it appears that they would like to keep their global contract for security. They have had that global contract, or had it, for about a period of 3,000 years, and they would like to have it back. And then I apparently get to keep my position. Now, the interesting part about my position is, number one, I don't believe they actually understand what it is and who actually appointed me to this position and why I have it and how I keep it. Next, they don't really understand all of the folks, let's just say folks, quote unquote, that we work with on our side. We have a lot of folks here, there, and elsewhere, as you know, that we work with on a daily basis, meaning we are friends, we have friendly relationships, but we have also built these relationships over the years. And by building relationships, it was initially kind of rocky. They didn't know if they could trust us. And over time, we built that trust and built those relationships. And we have working relationships. So it's not like one person or one party or is superior to the other. This is a working relationship towards a common goal of restoration, not only here on Earth, but also throughout the omniverse, and implementation of golden age systems and structures everywhere for the benefit of all. They don't really quite understand that concept because in their world, there's always been a hierarchy. You know, there's always been someone that they could go to. So the inquiries were coming in as to who could actually approve global contracts. Well, at this moment in time, the only person that they could reach that would actually listen would probably be me. But I'm not sure why I would want to do that. And I speak of myself as I, but in this case, it's us. Over the course of the last couple of years, and most recently, even in the last couple of days, they have managed to open portals, trip over themselves, invite things and AI beings that we didn't want here to come in, sent out incorrect frequencies that have caused a disruption in Earth's electromagnetic resonance, for lack of a better term. They have continuously tried to hack, and they don't even know what they're hacking with or what the technology they've tried to use does. And they still think they're going to bring back beings that they've talked about behind the scenes, such as Enki and Enlil and Marduk and others, because apparently they would prefer them. However, they are no longer in existence. They have constantly tried to misuse things like dust and call upon others from the lower astral to come and help them. They have been looking for technologies to try to fix what they believe is broken, but it's not broken, it's just changing. And failure to understand the resonance of Earth, the original resonance of Earth, and where Earth is changing. And meaning the omniverse is changing. The structure is changing because the consciousness that runs this omniverse is source. They don't understand that there isn't a duality in resonance and consciousness and how timelines are created and what overlays look like and holograms. The only thing they really care about is that they can control a hologram or had some kind of minimal access to holograms. And they would like to have that control and power. Do they understand that these types of mechanisms were never theirs to control. I doubt it, but because as it relates to us average, everyday, normal humans, it would appear to them that they had more power than we did. And to a lot of degrees in the past, that was true. But was it really? And this is the failure. This is something they fail to understand. So as it relates to average, everyday humans, we know we have an enormous amount of power. So much so they are constantly trying to get it from us. Humans and otherwise are constantly trying to get what we have naturally. The only advantage that they've had in the past is that we, as human beings, fail to recognize what that is and how to use it. There have also been mechanisms put in place far and wide that would prevent us from using it to its fullest extent, and they have used us in a lot of ways to manifest things that are almost equal and opposite to the things we are trying to manifest, whether we actually know it or not. The amount of power that we give away to certain humans, heads of state and otherwise, is extremely important to them, yet these people do not even understand why. We are constantly saying there is no savior. That includes myself, and the only thing I can do is help you understand who you really are. With the knowledge, I shouldn't say knowledge, with the wisdom that I learn every single day. And Source gives us exactly what we need when we need it. And it keeps coming and it keeps getting stronger here. You're probably noticing more people around you waking up. You have probably noticed a lot of turmoil over this weekend that you may have not seen in the past. Because as change continues to happen, there are other mechanisms that try to prevent that change. And right now, as of today, because of changes that have happened over the weekend, which we're going to talk about, the systems, ARTI, as we call it now, artificial intelligence or ARTI is on its last legs. So ARTI is constantly trying to fight back, trying to convince humans to authorize things that we don't want to authorize, sending us messages within dreams or in meditations that are incorrect. And you know it's incorrect, and you can feel that it's incorrect. The fact that the deep state is allegedly willing to what they see as a compromise with us tells us where they're at worldwide, and that they're running out of time with their own people. And will they wait forever, and can they wait forever? I don't know. And at this point, they told me 2 years ago and 3 years ago and last year, when we tried to negotiate with these people, that they were wanting to go it alone. They felt they had enough backing by whatever means to go it alone. So go it alone they can, and God bless you, because we have all moved on. We are continuing on with the restoration plan, some of which involves, monetary support, and other types of support are non-monetary that we have received over the years. We have an extreme amount of support at this moment because everyone everywhere is ready to go forward. Most everyone everywhere is also living in the now. We have fought tooth and nail over the last 3 or 4 days to push us into the now. And I kind of touched on it just ever so briefly in the last report, but I'm going to kind of explain it a lot more today. Before I get to that part, I wanted to kind of tell you about technologies a little bit. Technologies that were available on this planet long before humans ever got here, because we are a keystone, we are a nexus planet, everything that happens here happens everywhere else in the multiverse. We were the first, Earth was the first celestial being to come into creation after the divide of source into dark and light. There are a lot of benefits, let's just say, to being able to control Earth for those beings that are no longer with us, that were in the know, far greater than our deep state could ever be. And as far as damages that have been done since humans arrived on this planet versus what you believe and perceive that the deep state is doing on the daily basis, don't even enter into the same neighborhood. Can the deep state send frequencies? Their ability to do that is waning. Did they use other non-human technologies to do that? Yes. Did they communicate regularly with others that were allegedly, and I say allegedly, helping them to create technologies which they could control? Yes. Do those technologies serve them or us? No. Were they being used at the time when they held positions as sub-guardians or security on this planet to get them to install further technologies for control of other beings on this planet? Yes, they helped them tremendously gain control. Did those beings care about the deep state, dragon families, or black sun side, or a global security side? Absolutely not. They kept all of us, humans in one way and the deep state in another, running on a hamster wheel constantly. Whether it's things that allegedly worked out the way they planned or didn't work out the way they planned. And the same worked for us here as humans, regular humans, I should say, non-deep state member humans. A few years ago, and these are the things they fail to understand. So a few years ago, back in 2016, was the first departure of Marduk, and then Enki and Enlil followed, and Yaldabaoth and Samael and Michael Gabriel and Raphael and others that were working on the dark side or working to enslave humanity, all departed one after the other after the other. These departures were not a coincidence, and they were agreed upon by all that have any kind of influence here on Earth. The deep state is very upset this morning. And they're upset because, and they were upset yesterday as well, and they're always angry. What a way to live. But they're angry because they failed to understand that things they believe that they created were all based on non-human technologies. These technologies are far advanced, far beyond our human comprehension and even deep state comprehension. The technologies that I'm referring to as of the last couple of days would be predominantly things within Earth's orbit and satellite systems, quote unquote, and all of the technologies that were built upon those platforms. Some of these technologies as your telecommunication systems. And if you are a little savvy, then you are aware that most of our cell phone services and internet services run on a microwave mesh, which is very unhealthy for humans and completely unnecessary. But the original technology runs on an electromagnetic resonance, which is also unhealthy for life on this planet. If anything, you could call it anti-life technology. Now, they are permitted a certain amount of access to base platforms that allowed for them to build human-based binary coded programs and technologies attached to these platforms. So they had permission to do this, but the base root platforms were already built by those that were our enemy. And those that were the deep state's enemy, they just only starting to realize that now. Military and intelligence platforms were two such technologies that had been created off planet. And by off, I don't mean in the orbit or where our satellites are. I mean far, far away in another world, so to speak. Let's call it military world. Universal and omniversal dark military world for dark forces, as you saw like in Star Wars. What do they call them? The dark forces or something? I don't really watch Star Wars movies. I get enough Star Wars in real life. So in my spare time, that's the last thing I turn on is Star Wars or Star Trek or one of those. But the dark forces of the omniverse, so to speak, had built military technology. They did this in cooperation with the Draco. And all military technologies, omniversal wide, worlds and otherwise, were based on this type of technology. So if you were to build, you were the Abraxas, and you were to build a military technology, so to speak, you would have built it on this platform. Now, if you know anything about computers, even on Earth here, regular computers, then you know that controlling, building the base coding and base platform of any type of technology means that you control the entire thing. These languages and programming languages, let's call them in our terms, were not written in binary. They were not written in a language that they could actually understand. Therefore, further down, we had quote unquote human translation technologies. And this was a different type of platform. You could call it a sub-platform, if you will, to which all militaries worldwide built their technologies. So in Duck Dynasty land, they would like to build a golden dome over the United States. If they were to build such a defense technology, it would be built on this military platform. Without this military global platform, your technology does not exist. That's the bottom line. It cannot be autonomous. It has to have certain qualities and satellite features that know how to monitor substances such as nuclear enriched uranium that would be in a missile that you're trying to avoid, if it's a protection. And I always look at security as control, but, in their mind, I guess they think they're building something that is going to protect the United States. Now, if you have seen this technology, let's just take the military technology as an example, from its base root platform, and you do understand the language, which I have come to learn, then you will understand that your wars, your defense, your planes, your orange boxes, your fighter jets, your technologies, your advanced weapons systems, your radar systems, and all of that was completely controlled from the base platform. If you haven't seen a documentary, and I've talked about it before, but I'm going to mention it again to you because it's relevant here, of the man who saved the world. The documentary tells the story of an officer in the USSR military at the time that had detected an incoming nuclear missile coming from the west coast of the United States going to the USSR. I think there was more than one missile at the time, and he couldn't reach his superior officers and couldn't reach anyone, and the missiles were approaching, and they thought about counter-firing, and, then they thought about the implications. Whew, implications on humanity should they launch. And they were looking at the world as a whole and the effects of nuclear weapons and what this could do rather than just the country. Because if these were real, then the country was completely gone anyway. So they waited until they could actually set eyes rather than look at information that was coming through a radar. And it turns out that the missiles were not real and nothing had been fired. So that's why he's called the man who saved the world. I think he passed away recently. But it's just an indicator there of the power of Marduk. Now, I watched very carefully Marduk create a number of these types of scenarios all by himself without any help. He didn't call any militaries. He didn't call any generals. He didn't call the Order of the Black Sun. He didn't call the Order of the Black Dragon. He simply played a video game directly from where he was at. Now, I have also learned from him, like I said, he wasn't teaching me anything. He was showing me the power that he had, not only here, but elsewhere. I watched him blow up planets and galaxies and solar systems and all kinds of things. Forget the nuclear weapons that he falsely put on the radar of militaries many, many times on this planet. He's also redirected submarines. I watched this happen in November of 2014, where he redirected and gave false orders to several countries, including Germany and the United States. I think the Russians were involved, but he gave misinformation about the direction on which nuclear submarines should go and where they should actually fire. And he was merely playing a game with these submarines. And when I got to the Saturday meetings, because we used to have meetings every Saturday, I would ask him, I asked him about this. I said, what was this? And I knew the orders were coming from his access. And I know that because I watched it come in one language, get translated to another, and then to several languages in which the humans that were running those nuclear submarines would understand. And he kept screaming at me to shut up. He's like, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking. And that's when I knew, as charming as he tried to be, as allegedly helpful as he tried to be, he was lying. And it was all downhill from there. By mid-2015, we were no longer speaking. By 2016, he was no longer with us. So that was kind of the natural progression of Marduk. But I think it's important to reiterate what a base root platform can do. And these are just a few examples on how he used to have fun playing with the humans. He had been on this planet a long time. He had gone into stasis a few times. They call them long sleeps. But in our years and in our terms, it was thousands of years this last time, almost 20,000 years. It doesn't mean he wasn't elsewhere in existence. But here, he had been kind of running this place off and on for several million years, came back the last time in our time about 18,000 years ago, 18,000, and then officially permanently around 16,000, 17,000 years ago. So the importance of understanding the owning of a base root platform, not only for military purposes, but also for intelligence purposes. They say intelligence runs the world, knowledge is power, all of these little idioms that we say as humans. And that part is kind of true, because if you can control the intelligence, give false information, false intelligence, send people in certain directions, then, that intelligence information being incorrect causes people to make poor choices that end usually in death or war. In this particular case, the control of that base platform was Marduk's, and I watched him do it all the time. He not only gave intelligence information and false standing orders and even orders after death that would come through various AI systems saying that they are this person or that person. It didn't matter who he pretended to be. The information was still coming from him to start wars and do all sorts of things long after his death. That has been affecting humanity greatly, till we can find every platform that he put out there that would send the deep state false information and false hope. Therefore, we keep going, or they keep going, around in a circle. So maintaining control of base platforms, again, I will repeat, is important. Next, telecommunications. If you have access to the base platform of a cell phone network, you can monitor anything that anyone is saying on the phone or off the phone, as long as there is a phone present. Nearly all of our modern appliances run on Wi-Fi. You can communicate with the dishwasher and the refrigerator too, if you want to, or the dryer. You have access to virtually every television set in existence in the world. And not only that, with a specific type of microwave mesh, you also have control with the base platform of the mind, body, and soul of humans. Because telecommunications on that level also includes telepathic communication. It could send telepathic messages, dreams, all sorts of things to people. Now, media would be the same. Put out this information. In 2 days' time, this is going to happen. And in the past, it would always happen. But that's because Marduk would make it happen. Put countries on the verge of war, create conflicts in order to have an end result of a certain amount of energy or looshing that would take place shortly thereafter. Human Internet of Things, Internet of Body Things, all types of internets of things, so to speak, existed, and the base root platform for that also was run by Marduk. Therefore, once they get this, everybody's paranoid about mRNA, and I'm not going to say they shouldn't be, but remember, everything has a base root platform. Barcodes of Life Initiative are based on a different type of coding system that categorizes and catalogs the assets of planet Earth, including human beings and other minerals that of interest, plus the energy that's of interest, and the ability to rewrite languages, which also exists on Earth. And I don't mean the ones that you speak. I mean AI creator programming languages. So, that being said, we have and have had for a while now those base root platforms. Because the deep state had limited amounts of access to these technologies, never, of course, the base root platform, always only ancillary programs so that they could act as good little actors in the movie in order to perform functions that were complementary to what the AI needed and wanted. They thought that this was power. And did it feel powerful to them? I'm sure it did. They've just never seen power before. That's why. They don't understand what true power actually is. And of course, all power comes from source. These technologies that were built upon base platforms in order to destroy worlds, including Earth and the control of Earth, eventually, were key to the success of non-humans running this planet, and eventually, as they had hoped, the entire omniverse, including full control of source. Now, they never quite got a hold of source and took full control over source. However, they were able to change the current and the flow and divert it in many ways before it actually reached humans, with the exception of the inside out, meaning inside your mind, your body, and your soul, there was always that connection. Otherwise, you wouldn't exist. So the internal connection was something they could not interfere with, and it was very frustrating for them because in versions of humans past, no matter what they did, they could not sever that connection. This time around, they made more of an effort. However, they still could not sever that connection. But what they could do was mask it enough so you didn't understand the difference. False light versus light. False golden energy of source versus light energy. It would feel the same to you. It would look the same to you. But because they had broken your circadian rhythm, and you'll have to look up what that is, but that basically helps you differentiate day from night, according to the internet version, but it also helps you differentiate the difference between dark and light. Because they broke the circadian rhythm of humans or interfered with it, that made it easier for them to introduce false light. Therefore, the humans would be grasping for anything light at that point in such a dark world. That being said, this brings us to talking more about the now and how the now works. Now, when you think of, and I say now when you think of, now when you think of the now, you might think of being present in the moment, enjoying what is currently around you, and planning in the now, and thinking only of the now. Somehow, as humans, we're always dragged into the past, the present, and the future. And that is for a reason. You see, because Artie, as we talked about Artie, artificial intelligence, Artie, all alleys and otherwise, could only create in the past, present, and future. It could never distort the now. Just as your soul always was sources, the now has always been sources. The second you stop thinking about the now, which it's almost inevitable for humans on this planet, you start thinking about where you've got to be to work tomorrow and where you've got to go at 2:00 today, or where, your savings, you're planning for retirement, you're planning for your future, you're planning on doing things in the future for restoration. Even positive things are still taking you out of the now. That is done on purpose because they cannot manipulate your person in the now. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the difference between the now and the past, present, and future, because it's very confusing, and I just wanted to take a few moments to touch on that. So I've got probably 20 minutes to explain. Okay, let's bring up the whiteboard real quick. So I'm going to draw this as it is in a straight line, but that's not necessarily the case. Oh, we went to green. Whoops. Okay, let's call this, if this was any point in the omniverse, let's call this point the now. Now, the now actually kind of exists throughout the whole area, let's just say, of the omniverse. The now doesn't just exist at a point in quote-unquote time. It is actually the only point where the now can peek through the overlays and holograms and the matrices as you will. That is the now. So in the past, you'll have many different versions of reality. Those realities are not only time, quote unquote, lines, they are also considered holograms and realities of what you see as the past, present, and future. So these are different subsectors of time as we understand it. Now, this is the future. So, and what you would see as the present, because there's an overlay on the now that we call the present. The present is actually, in reality, the past. And it's a constant vicious cycle that we have been living in, not only here on Earth, but throughout the omniverse to some degree. Now, over the course of the last 30 to 45 days in Earth time, most everybody has gotten rid of the past, present, and future and lives in the now. The now is where the golden age lives. As it's been constructed, the now is where the true earth exists. And in the future, we have infinite amounts of artificial earths created by Artie. We have infinite amounts of artificial humans. We have infinite amounts of artificial planets in our galaxy. We have infinite amounts of artificial suns and moons. We have infinite amounts of constellations that we can see in our sky. And all of these artificial creations happen in the space between the now, whoop, there we go, that popped up. Apparently nobody wanted me to write that. Okay, that exist in the space between the now and 2 minutes in the future. So every 2 minutes, a new reality is created. A new version of you is created. You are being created here and in 2 minute increments and even in spaces between zeptoseconds, so to speak, in the past, present, and future. This creates confusion sometimes, especially as Artie begins to waver and falter, because you think you did something that you didn't do. You look at the clock and it's midnight and, well, still can't sleep. You toss and turn for a while and you look at the clock again, what feels like 20 minutes later, and it's midnight. It's causing disruptions somewhat in time on this planet as we revert back to the now. Now, as it relates to Earth, the being we know is the demiurge or Yaldabaoth. Everybody thinks it's a he. It's not. It's a she. She's no longer with us, but the control mechanism still existed. So this would be Earth's core, which had been totally distorted in so many ways. And you could call this a nucleus. So if this was a nucleus in this description, you would have electrons going around in multiple different directions and, as many electrons as you had floating around and going through the nucleus. Well, as it relates to Earth, you actually had holographic, artificial electrons, so to speak, that were mini Earths. Now, there were an infinite number of these cycles, so to speak, not only around Earth, but every planet in this galaxy, which actually created the artificial future, even though it was only a zeptosecond around yourself and around the planet. So the same structure existed around humans too. It existed on every planet in this galaxy, the sun, the moon, and it was constantly reweaving the reality. Every time that one of these fake Earths would pass through the nucleus and onto the other side, it was changing reality. And in the past, in this quote-unquote nucleus here in the center, is where Yaldabaoth used to live, or the Demiurge. The Demiurge was hell-bent on becoming Source. And since they couldn't fully control Source within you and within the Omniverse, the only thing they could do was take that bit of creation, go 2 minutes out, and recreate the creation. So we were almost running on a hamster wheel because 2 minutes or less before we got to our next step, that reality was being recreated to put a roadblock in front of your face, to make sure that you would never reach out to Source, to change all that you had learned every 2 minutes. And within that 2 minutes, there were multiple zeptoseconds that would change as well. It was constantly reweaving like a giant loom, so to speak, the programming of Earth as a keystone, which would then permeate throughout the entire multiverse. Not fully understanding that if we could figure out how to live in the now, which they made it really hard, we could then create our own reality. But it was almost impossible to create our own reality because they would constantly be recreating it. Could they see through the telecommunications satellite system on Earth what you were thinking? Yes. Did the deep state have some access to that? Minor amounts, brainwave technologies, things like that. This would actually catch it when that thought was forming, therefore account for that less than 2 minutes into the future. How dastardly. It's like running on a hamster wheel. You know, when you would go to create things like a business or a cure for a disease or something like that as a human, they would know that you got the wisdom from Source because it came from within where Source can reach you. And then it manifested itself into wisdom and then eventually into a thought. They're like, oh, no, this is our dark age. This is our bit of creation. We created disease. Therefore, we're going to rewrite the pathway here. We're going to interfere with other humans' thoughts that might be willing to give you a grant, that might be willing to explore your cure, and all kinds of things. Think about how dastardly it is forcing us to live in the past, present, and future, not understanding the now. So with these mechanisms, which went absolutely bonkers yesterday, as we were pulling it apart, we're like, ooh, these things started to speed up faster and faster and faster. So it could try to reweave ahead of us. It was almost like a dead man switch that went off for several hours yesterday. So if you were in the States, that would be around till about 3 o'clock my time, maybe 4. And I don't think even the deep state knew what the heck this mechanism was. The only thing I did was start to convert Earth and humanity and the omniverse to ensure that we could now all live in the now. Because right now, pretty much Earth is left. Maybe this entire galaxy. And that's it. Everybody else is in the now. Everybody else is enjoying the golden age. And by now, it does mean being in the moment. But what that means is when you manifest something in the moment, you have to actually bring it into the reality. So these also create artificial realities. Which are a creation of the arties. So artificial realities are created every 2 minutes. Crazy. It was so hard to try to figure this out. And then when this machine started going double time, we were like, oh boy, And then we had the council on it. We had another council that we consulted with that has seen this. And we were all trying to figure out how to dismantle this bomb before it went off yesterday. So, we all worked together. This is not a hierarchical system. This is about figuring out mechanisms of the dark that were put in place so that we could dismantle it without causing severe harm. Because we had unlimited humans living in unlimited realities. That deja vu that you feel sometimes, like you've already done this before? Yeah, well, chances are you might have. And then it's gone 2 minutes later. So on that note, I hope that further explains the now. I mean, we can talk about it more again in the near future. Just a couple of pieces of house cleaning, so to speak, internally here in the network I wanted to touch on. As many of you know, I talked about the fact that we launched our supplements last week. We had a lot of orders, and we are eternally grateful. We have new backstock arriving today. It was a holiday yesterday in the States, so they got it out to us as quickly as they could. We also have more stock coming in this week, and then we should be completely caught up and ready to go forward. So that will be great. Hopefully, we have another large shipment that we had them manufacture for us, which should be here no later than the 13th of June, and another one on the 4th. So they are working really hard to meet our demand. This particular laboratory that manufactures all our stuff for us is in the States here. So with the tariffs, apparently everybody all of a sudden is looking for a laboratory in the States that can manufacture their stuff versus importing it from elsewhere. So they've been very busy unexpectedly. And we were not expecting to, kind of hit the ground running like we did either. So I just wanted to thank all of you for your patience. You should start seeing your orders, if you are back ordered, come out starting today. So that will be great. And I'm just thankful for all of you, and I do hope that what we have put together for you here is going to be helpful to you. So on that note, this has been the GIA report for the 26th of May. I just wanted to point out to you, since we're recording this on Tuesday, the 27th here in the States, that we probably will have our next report on Friday around 4 p.m. Mountain Time. We should be able to get started, and that report is going to be live on all our channels, followed by a question and answer on our app, which will happen after the live report. So on that note, I am looking forward to talking to all of you again on the Q&A. I love those. Just wanted to say thank you in advance for all of you that are able to attend, and I will see you live on Friday.